Well, good morning and welcome to the Church Office podcast. Very special guest today. We've got Anna Wood from Liverpool on with us. Nice to have you with us.
Thank you very much for having me. Lovely to be here.
It's great. And you're involved in a number of churches and an organisation called Cornerstone Liverpool. Is that right? Or Cornerstone Collective, isn't it?
Yes. So the overall organisation is Cornerstone Collective of Churches. I'm based in Liverpool, which is where the first church that started the formation of the Cornerstone Collective of Churches is located. Essentially the collective idea is that we are running a group of churches across Merseyside with a vision of trying to have more churches planted and set up and running across the region to spread the gospel across Merseyside, really.
I love it. It's a really interesting model, and I think that's why we wanted to put on the podcast. Is that you're not just doing a campus model, but actually you're church planting locally, and you've got 4 churches that are currently in, maybe a 5th on the go. Lockdown has interrupted lots of different things and plans, I'm sure. And you're the operations director of this, kind of helping to coordinate everything in the background, really. Enjoy it.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. It's been a very big learning curve for me. I only came into the role in September 2020. So COVID wasn't a big enough challenge. I thought I'd take on a new job at the same time. So I'd been a teacher for 17 years before that, in various roles within education, and had been a trustee of the Cornerstone Collective charity for 4 or 5 years before last year. And essentially they identified that they needed someone to fulfill sort of an operational role, to actually have somebody running all the things in the background that the pastors were capable of doing, but it was taking them away from what really should be their focus of actually spreading the gospel in pastoring their churches. And so I took that on, and I am really enjoying it, but it's definitely been an interesting time trying to sort of learn on the job in COVID and all of those other challenges that are presented. But so far, so good.
So give our listeners just a bit of kind of history and sort of how these churches, we were talking before about them being autonomous churches, and tell us a little bit about your model, because not everyone is doing it the way you guys are doing it.
Back in 2009, about 13 of us started a replant of a church in South Liverpool. The eldership at that church had approached a friend of mine, Steve Robbo, over whether he would consider becoming a pastor of that church. They recognised that they were dwindling in numbers and struggling to keep things, functioning as a church. Mm-hmm. So a group of us went at that point, and by God's blessing and amazing abundance, we have seen significant growth since 2009 in that congregation. So much so that by September 2013, we were in a position where we planted a church across the other side of the River Mersey on the Wirral, in a place called Bebington. Okay. And that church, again, has been really blessed with growth and development over time. They're now numbering around 150-ish people regularly. Liverpool is around 250, although obviously COVID is hard to tell exactly where we're at.
It is.
But essentially from there, we've then intentionally looked to try and work out how we can reach more people in Merseyside by planting or revitalising churches. So we've planted 2 further two further churches in just over 3 years ago, in about 3 miles from where we are, inside Liverpool, further south. And then we launched publicly in April this year a 4th church in a place called Kensington in Liverpool, which is about three miles further north from where we are located. So they're relatively close to each other, and centrally under the umbrella of Cornerstone Collective of Churches Charity, which means they're under the umbrella of kind of my role as an operations person. So anything that needs to be done in terms of safeguarding, in terms of finances, HMRC, Charity Commission, Companies House, etc., all of those sorts of things are centrally done by me and a team of various different volunteers and trustees. But they then operate themselves as autonomous churches. So each church has a lead pastor. And as they grow and become more established, they then establish their own eldership boards as well. But they retain links with the collective elders as well. So, for example, the church which launched in April, at the time, at the moment, it's just the one pastor, the one elder, who therefore is still linked in with the Cornerstone Liverpool eldership. But again, over time, as that evolves and becomes more established, that church will seek to appoint further elders to create a plurality of eldership, but still to retain links with the collective. So there's a real relational aspect to it.
I love that.
In terms of how the model works. So it's autonomous churches, but taking away that burden of all the things which, a lot of pastors would say, I don't want to know all the detail. I don't want to know who's giving what money or how much that's going to cost me to get my CCLL license this year. I just want to make sure we've got enough coming in and we're going to be able to meet our obligations. Exactly. And so, on lots of different levels of the operational aspects, I just see my role as being something which enables them to do that and frees them up to really focus on what they are skilled in and what they should be focused on.
Yeah. And enabling, that's such a great word, isn't it? And that is what we, I'd have that over my door in my office. It's like we enable others to do ministry. We make it easy for them. We try and support them in things that they're not necessarily naturally gifted to do and stuff like that. Yeah.
One of the first things that I went to before we started to lock down again in the autumn, so I think it was early October, there was one face-to-face meeting of local churches within Merseyside, not just ourselves, across different denominations. And it was mostly church leaders, pastors there. But my colleague had said, come along, because it'd be good for you to meet people and just to have an idea of what's going on in the city, which was great. But then it came to the introductions, and I'm sat there in a room full of other people who are all proper pastors, properly in ministry. And I'm racking my brain thinking, what am I going to say about enable was literally the word that came to mind. That's what it is. That's the crux of what I'm trying to do. Is that I'm not on the coal face of the gospel spreading necessarily, but hopefully what I'm doing enables that to happen. Yeah. And that's really what I keep reminding myself of in the daily tasks, which seem a little unexciting, but they're really important.
Yeah, no, it's great, isn't it? I love those things that we can, those jobs that we can take off a pastor, and you can see the kind of release and the joy that comes of, I don't have to do this. You're going to do this for me, and I can go and read my book or go and study the scripture or get ready for Sunday or think about how we could reach out in the city. And we've kind of enabled that to happen. And I love it. It's exciting to kind of take these practical jobs on and do it. So that connection between the practical and the gospel, and you are doing ministry work because you are enabling it, these church leaders to serve. And I mean, it's hard enough just running one church in the background, but here you are running multiple churches with multiple leaders, and obviously going to have a real mix of gifting, and each church is going to take on their own sort of style and flavor depending on that leader. How are you able to coordinate all of this? What does your week look like to do this?
So it's still very much evolving. I'm not going to say it's all in place yet. But my week at the moment is relatively Liverpool focused, just because that's where I'm located. And I work very closely with Steve Robbo, I mentioned before, who is the director of the collective, but he's also the senior pastor at Cornerstone Liverpool. So we will meet together regularly during the week. and just plan for things that we want to do on a collective level. So, for example, we're looking to start the next church plant residency with people coming on to be trained to be pastors. It's something that we've sort of trialed the last couple of years, but again, we've just been refining it. We essentially took the lockdown period to really try and review exactly how we've been functioning as churches, but also on a collective level to enable the churches to continue to grow and to continue to plant. So church planter residency is something that we're setting up and trying to get really flowing now with new pastors coming in to be trained up and to then be planting churches or revitalising churches in the local area. So there'll be aspects of that going on. And then it's a case of trying to kind of touch base with the different church pastors as and when necessary. So not hounding them all the time because I don't need to, and they want to get on with what they need to do. But equally, for example, our financial year runs from the 1st of August to the 31st of July. So I'm now at a point where I'm trying to politely push them to, we need to set your budget for next year. Let's do it before the summer holidays, please. So that sort of thing it's quite fluid in the way it's structured. Longer term, what I'm aiming to set up is where each church will have hopefully some willing volunteers who volunteer to step up to do operational aspects. So we're essentially trialing it with the new church plant that I mentioned before. Somebody in that church plant team who has shown an interest and a willingness to come on board and do some of the admin for that church, and some of the things that needs a focus on a Sunday level as much as anything else. So that's the kind of hope I'm going to have eventually, a point person in each church to say, right, your gas and electricity is ridiculously expensive. We need to review. Your review date is this. Can you have that in your diary, please? So that at that point you can, make sure that is on whatever, small or big, those sorts of things. And hopefully I can coordinate between the different churches more efficiently. One of the big things that I've been working on is to do with safeguarding processes in terms of ensuring that all the different churches are, at least compliant, if not better, with safeguarding measures. And, it's complex because there's so many different things we do need to consider on that. But
and different venues as well, isn't it? And all those different volunteers that are serving.
But equally, safeguarding, but the policy itself is central because the principles of safeguarding apply in all the contexts. So it's about, trying to work out how we streamline that process to ensure that we can get projects and different things in the churches off the ground as quickly as possible so that DBS checks aren't a hindrance. It suddenly becomes something which is easy to do and get done because I've put something in place to make that process happen. It's very much a work in progress. But in terms of running the multiple sites, it has potential to be chaotic, but thankfully so far it hasn't been too bad.
Well, you must be doing a good job. That's the point, I guess. You appoint someone who you can trust, who can deliver, what you need, isn't it? And it's really fascinating, your model, because ours is typically, we identify a church planter, we train them in the same way that you probably do. We're then looking to build a team to try and create someone, a team with somebody in there who's operational, who's management, whether it be voluntary or in a part-time or even a full-time. Sometimes we've been able to send 2 guys out to a location. But it's a slow process, and it takes quite a long time. So, I think the last church plant we've done was 7 or 8 years ago, but there's this kind of, when I talk to you and look at what you guys are doing, there's a speed, and it's slightly quicker than our model. And you're also
momentum.
Serving other churches who need that kind of revitalization as well.
Yeah, so as well as the ones that we've actually planted, there's been a couple of different churches in the region who've reached out just for advice or support from the leaders over the years, and that's been a real blessing, I think, to us as well as to those individual churches as well. But tangibly, in a couple of cases, we're able to testify to God's grace in those churches and those situations where they were finding something difficult, something wasn't quite working, or they were struggling to have any growth in their church, and actually now they can testify to how God has changed that situation. So, and we haven't, we're not formally linked to them; they're not part of the collective, but we see that our mission is to spread God's word on Merseyside, whether that's through a church of the collective or whether that's through other churches. It doesn't really matter, as long as it's being done well and being done truthfully and faithfully to God's word. So if we can help other churches in that, then we're always keen to. That's one of the things that we've been working on with our website, is to do sort of a whole list of different aspects that we're willing to offer sort of training or coaching and to other churches outside of the collective, if it's helpful to them. Just to not to say that we're experts, because in no way, shape or form are we, but equally it might just be that we have some ideas that haven't been thought of by others, or we might be able to use our experience and say, well, actually we made a mistake there, I wouldn't do that, perhaps try this instead, so other people can learn from our mistakes.
Absolutely right. Now. Yeah, and I think it's worth saying here as well, isn't it, is that this model works brilliantly in Liverpool, don't you? Where you've got a big area, you've got lots of universities, you've got a very busy city. This kind of model might not work in a kind of rural Wales where we are in some ways, and
that's it. It's got to be. You've got to sort of look at your context and see what's going to work in those. Yeah, and Liverpool is quite an interesting city in terms of religion, just because it's actually very religious, but it's a lot of sort of identity religion, not necessarily faith-based religion. Yeah, but what it does mean is that people are often less objectionable to the idea of church. They may not necessarily understand exactly what we think church should be and all that comes with that, but it does mean that people are often less objectionable to conversations to do with church and the gospel. I worked in a Catholic school for the last 17 years before this job, and I had to sign my contract to say I was going to be sympathetic to the Catholic faith, and that was absolutely part of my job, but equally it didn't mean that I couldn't then have conversations with colleagues or with pupils in an appropriate way to share my personal faith and my understanding of the Bible. And actually, it would often open more doors than perhaps it would have done if it was entirely secular. So Liverpool is a good location, I think, for what we're trying to do from that point of view too.
Oh, it's really exciting, and we've kind of had a conversation, and we're going to get our senior pastors to have a conversation, because I think it's just a great opportunity to connect and just learn from each other, isn't it? And the different models that happen, and just your experience and our experience, church planting, and I love what you're doing, and I just love the fact that you're. What flows out from you is this gospel passion. We're about the gospel. And that's one of the things that just attracted me to the church and to yourself. I just thought, I want to connect and link with people who just love the gospel. And we want to do operations well, but there's always that, it always leads to the gospel. We want to tell people about Jesus. And that's the key message, isn't it, in this?
Yeah, 100%. If I was doing this just because I liked working with numbers, or I liked making sure we were compliant with legislation, it just wouldn't be the same. That motivation has to be deeper. And that's why it's such a privilege really to be doing what I'm doing now. Many years ago, one of my friends reminded me of this when I was debating what to do about working in this role or not. Many years ago, I'd said to my friend, I would love to work for the church and just to sort them all out, to make sure they're all organised.
And now's your chance.
Here I am.
Yeah, funny that God calls you to this role. Yeah,
that's it.
Well, I just love it, and it's so great to talk to you and just hear a little bit more about your work and the church and how you guys are reaching out with the gospel, and the crucial role that you play in the background to coordinate these things. I'm sure Steve would be lost without you, at his side, support and guiding.
Well,
guiding voice.
You might have to ask him, but equally, so far it seems to be okay.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, thank you for taking the time to connect with us on the podcast, and just love what you said and love what you shared. And we definitely want to get you back. And I know we're going to talk more about safeguarding and how we do that in our church as well. So, but thank you for your time today. If any listeners have got questions for Anna, I'm going to, and please email them into questions@thechurchoffice.co.uk. We'd love to kind of answer any and get Anna back on and answer some questions for you. And so please do send them in. We'd love to be able to kind of serve you in this way. Please check out their website. Anna, tell us the website address that people can go to find out more about you guys.
Yeah, so it's cornerstone-collective.org. And from there you can find links to all the different churches that we're involved with. So yeah, we'd lovely to hear from anybody that's interested in finding out more. Yeah, and thank you for having me.
Oh, pleasure. No, it's great to have you. Thank you for your time. Well, goodbye, and I'll see you soon.
Yeah, will do. Thank you very much.